Okay, story time right quick. Now, this was from a few years ago. My last criminal case, I was charged with possession of a firearm. Now, this is I keep all of my criminal paperwork transcripts because I know how foul the system play. And this judge and this officer conspired against me. The judge broke laws and everything. Now, these are the transcripts, word for word, on what was said. And I'm going to show you how foul they play. This judge aiding and abetting this officer during my trial to conjure up fake evidence against me. And the judge do not supposed to help the prosecution to try to prosecute me far wise as the judge is there to judge. So the prosecutor can't help the prosecution in order to try to get a conviction out you. That's not the judge role. It's illegal for him to do that. For those who don't know the law, right? So let's take it from what the officer said. Now, these was important evidence in my case that would have proved that the officer was lying, right? So this is what the officer said. This is Officer Madeline, right? Here go the judge. The judge. Did Mr. Cope ask you to look for your notes? Now, the notes he's talking about is all fake. He never had no notes. They tried to say that I gave a confession, right? And I'm showing y'all how they lied, right? He said, Mr. Madeline, he asked me if there was any physical notes. This is the judge speaking to court. And you said, this is the officer, Officer Madeline. He said, I said no. The officer said no, there were no physical notes. They were all mental because in my thinking, putting his just his information on a piece of paper, not really a note, but that could be my mistake, Your Honor. So here's the officer admitting that he never had a note and that it was all mental, right? Look what the judge do. The judge tried to sway him and lead him into thinking that, well, is a possibility, even though you said it was a mental note, that you got a note at home. So basically just go home and rewrite the note and then bring it back and now accept it as evidence. The judge cannot do that. But this is what the judge did. He said, so the note. So you possibly have a note in your house. The officer never said that. The officer never said that. He said that it was mental. The officer never spoke about his house or having it. So this is the judge way of leading him into saying that basically, well, go to your house and write up this note. This is what the judge is doing. Nothing the officer said out his mouth was related to his house. This is the officer's whole statement. I said no. They were all mental. Speaking about the notes, the judge asked them, was any of the notes physical? The officer said no. They were all mental. And the judge said, so the notes you possibly have, you possibly have a note in your house. How would he possibly have a note in his house when he just said that he had no notes and they were all mental? But anyway, this is the system, right? So this is what the judge did. The judge was out of bounds. He never supposed to did this, was illegal, but I didn't know this at the time though. But I saw them trying to railroad me and set me up though, right? So let's see. Okay, so here's the judge again. That really has no burn. This is my lawyer. Mr. Purnell was my lawyer. Okay, I withdraw that. I beat this case like all my other cases myself. Here you go. He was in custody. Let me get to the juicy part where I'm showing y'all what he said. So after the officer admit, here go the judge now. It say, and I would like to see him try to find those notes. How? When the officer already admitted, and this is when I was in jail taking my notes, y'all, because after I saw the bullshit, I knew what angle they was trying. So I'm in court taking my notes. Now, this is from years ago. I still have my paperwork. The judge asked him, did he write the Miranda time down? He said yes on a small piece of paper and afterwards threw it away. So this is what the officer said. This is what the officer said earlier in the transcript that he wrote it on the paper, but then he threw it away. Then he said that, no, I never had no physical notes, that they were all mental. You see the lies that the court did? Now look, this is another thing that the court did. So after the judge is trying to convince him to go home and conjure up and write this note, first and foremost, you can't let an officer go home after he said that he never had a physical note and that he threw the note away to go home and give him a chance to write another note to convict me. But that's what they did though. But I still beat the case because let me show you how smart I am, why they were trying to set me up. Okay, so it said, and I would like to try to see him find the notes. Now it said, the only way that would come in his credibility, and I understand how the officer could get confused about whether or not he put it on before he found out. But the problem is, it's not a problem. The fact is, he knew there was a warrant out. The officer knew there was a warrant out. No, he didn't. So this is what the court said. Now this is him again trying to coerce him. There may be. This is the judge. There may be notes. How is there notes when the officer first and foremost said that he threw them away? Then he said, I just showed y'all on this is page 37. I just showed y'all on page 35 that the officer said that they were all mental. But let's go ahead and finish showing how they tried to get me. Now the judge is still trying to convince him. Now the judge said, there may be notes. Now listen, here go the bullshit, y'all. This is during my trial. He said, here go the judge. I'm going to watch the video. I'm going to order that police officer go home. How far do you live from here? This is him talking to the officer, y'all. How did the judge do this, right? The judge is not supposed to do that. And here's the officer. Just down the road is what the officer said. Then he said maybe 10 minutes. And here's the judge. Well, maybe get another day. But I want him to search for that video. Search for the notes. If you have the notes, give them to the Commonwealth. If the Commonwealth has the notes, give them to the defense. And then I'll make my mind up on the issue on whether or not Miranda warnings were read after we know this. They lied. They never had it. You see how he orchestrated the officer to go home and to write down a note after the officer said that there were mental notes, and then the officer said that he threw the notes away. So why would the judge say that, well, I believe that they're probably at your house, and I'm going to order you to go home and find it? The judge can't do that. So how I beat them, right, in case because I'm so smart, here go all. When I get locked up, the first thing I do is research case laws about people who was charged with the same thing, just to show y'all what type of guy I am, because this is what I do. See, these court cases that I had to go to the law library and research, because that's what I do. I love to learn. I saw the bullshit. I saw them setting me up. You see, this ain't what snitches do. Now you understand why the system hate me? Because I'm smart. All case logs. This is what I do. This is the type of smart guy I am. So back to me telling y'all how I beat them, why they was trying to set me up, right? As y'all can see. So how they tried to set me up, y'all, by the officer doing that, by the judge doing that, he tried to allow the officer to go home and conjure up some fake evidence just so they could try to get a conviction. See, but they were so busy trying to set me up, they missed one critical step and what the loophole that I needed to beat my case. And this is how smart I am. So what they did was they failed to send this gun off to the ballistics lab. So they did test it for fingerprints, but of course, no fingerprints. You see, it's wrapped in something. No fingerprints or DNA was found on the gun, right? So what they did was only test for DNA and fingerprints, y'all. They didn't fire the gun off. So they never test fired the gun. And if they don't test fire the gun, then what happened was when it was time for them to read the verdict, right before they came back with the verdict, I stood up in the courtroom and I said, Your Honor, that's a fake gun. There's no scientific proof right now in the evidence saying that that's a real firearm. And by definition, a firearm is an object that's designed to propel or to propel a projectile by the means of explosion. So if y'all never tested this gun, you don't know if there's a firing pin in it. So right now, unless y'all are gonna fire it in court, which y'all cannot do, that gun is a replica. And y'all wanna know what happened? I beat the case. They had to throw it out.